Today we're going to learn about Chapter 6, the cognitive theories of learning. The three people that's in this group is Joseph, Whitney, and Caitlin. The first thing that we're going to learn about is about the information processing model. It's basically a theory of learning and memory. And there's three main stages, which includes the sensory register, also known as sensory memory, working memory, also known as short-term memory, and long-term memory. The executive processing goes in to the information processing model, and it's not automatic. The learner controls the learning process. Example would be memory skills, and imagine studying for a driver's test or falling down. If you're trying to take a study for a driver's test, you're most likely going to clue in on it, and you're not going to pay attention to your surroundings. And if you're falling, you're already going to figure out what you're going to do so you don't hurt yourself as much as you just fall down your elbow and you just break it or something. The first stage is sensory register, and it takes in incoming information for about just a fraction of a second, and it consists of the five senses, which is sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. An example can be drawing with a sparkler, because once you light the sparkler, it lights up and it shoots little sparkles, but once it's out, you're not going to see it anymore. It's just going to be, it's just going to disappear. Again, the information isn't attended. If it's not attended, it'll be forgotten, and it goes with working memory and long-term memory too. And if you receive it, it's known as attention, and if it's processed, this is known as perception, which is you seeing it. An example can relate to basketball. If the ball handler isn't paying attention to their defender, and they're paying attention more to the crowd, then they'll most likely get embarrassed and probably get dunked on. The importance of sensory register. Imagine driving on the road. If there is heavy traffic, you're going to pay attention more to what's around you and what you hear. If someone's honking, and you're probably going to know that they're having a road rage and you don't want to mess with them. So you're going to most likely drive safer. And you're going to pay attention more to the roads than the buildings, and of course, sounds of other cars instead of your radio. Now, back to attention. Paying attention intently means forgetting other stimulus. And losing attention means distracting stimulus. And the distracting stimulus will end up kicking in. If you're watching a basketball game and it gets very boring, you're not going to really want to watch it. You're going to go get a snack or a soda, and when you come back, you'll probably miss like an important part of the game, and they'll come back, but yeah. How to gain a person's attention. So the way to gain a person's attention is that you should use cues such as gestures, repetition, body position, and one's own voice. Such as a comedian, they're gonna move around, they're gonna make you laugh, joke, they're gonna add emphasis to their words just to make you laugh. And the second stage is working memory. It's a stage where students have trouble learning, and it's the stage where you have a storage of a limited amount of information for just a few seconds. It holds about 5 to 10 items for 12 to 20 seconds. It's pretty much like a grocery list. When you write it down, you're gonna learn like the most important parts that you need, which could be like vegetables such as celery or eggs or whatever. And once you write it down, you're gonna put it in your pocket, and then when you think about it, you'll only remember only a certain amount of things. And it comes from both the sensory and long-term memory. And if you keep rehearsing it, which is the repeating of information, you can actually bring the information from your sensory register to your working memory. Or if you do it long enough, it could go from your working memory to your long-term memory. And if you don't repeat it, which is the last and final stage of the information processing model. And it holds a large amount of information. And it can last from forever to almost forever. And it can be both active and inactive. Knowledge helps us understand short-term memory, and the more information that you have in your long-term memory, it'll help you speed up your process from the sensory register and the short-term memory, and then it'll help you learn just like going to school, and it'll help speed up the process of the three memories faster. The problems with memory, however, is that it's hard to locate, and sometimes we just forget. An example can be trying to take a test and like a mathematics exam. and you forget how to solve it, you end up taking a break, or you can go to the next question, and then before you're done, you go back to your question, and then all of a sudden it just clicks in. So we're going to learn about the 3 strategies in long-term memory. There's procedural memory, episodic memory, and semantic memory. The procedural memory is the storage of information about how to do things. You have to take procedures to ride a bike, drive a car. Every now and then you'll fail, and then sooner or later when you get on that bike, you're just going to keep on riding and hopefully not hit a bush. And it also starts at birth. It starts at birth, where you need to learn how to breathe, learn how to eat, potty and stuff like that. Episodic memory is the storage of images of our personal experiences. On the picture on your right is a picture of 9/11 when 2 planes hit the Twin Towers. And the people who lived during this time period, they're actually able to recall what happened, especially the people that lived in New York. The recalling of these important events is known as flashbulb memory. And the last one is semantic memory. It's the storage of facts and knowledge in schemata. Now, schemata, also known as schema in a singular form, is an outline of concepts or ideas. An example can be the difference between a chair and a bench. No, actually, in a way, they resemble each other, but a bench is longer. And while you're young, as a kid, kids will actually think of it both as chairs. So there are also some uses of the information processing model in the classroom, such as providing handouts and using your own voice to help teach the class. Some of those are gaining the students' attention and pointing out important information. And then these are some other ways to help the teacher teach the classroom and help them learn. So a quick review about the information processing model. There's 3 main stages: the sensory register, the working memory, and the long-term memory. If we decide not to keep repeating the information, we will actually lose the information. Forgetting it and not knowing the information are not the same, they're actually different. And the sensory register lasts for a fraction of a second, working memory lasts 12 to 20 seconds, and long-term memory can last from forever to almost forever. There are also 2 other processing models. The levels of processing theory emphasizes that students will learn what they process. The lowest level is remembering something and recalling it for remembrance, such as the name of a person on a phone. You remember the name but not the number, and which goes into the highest level, which means that you give meaning to it. The numbers for the name of the people. The second processing model is the dual code theory. It's when a person can only recall in one type of format, and it usually refers to the visual and mental theory, and it only focuses on visual and mental stuff. An example is using someone's name and remembering their name by their face.
So I'm Katie. I'm going to continue what Joseph started about talking about cognitive theories of learning. And my sections are forgetting and remembering, and how can memory strategies be taught. So what I'm first going to start to discuss is that most forgetting occurs because information in working memory was never transferred to long-term memory, but it can also occur because we have lost access to information in our long-term memory. So over the years, researchers have identified several factors that make it easier or harder to forget information, and one of them is interference. And according to interference, information gets mixed up or pushed aside by other information. So in one class experiment by Peterson and Peterson, they gave 2 groups of people sets of nonsense words, 3-letter nonsense words, such as MFG or GTV, and one of the groups, they gave them time to rehearse these 3-letter syllables, and then the other group, immediately after they were given the nonsense syllables, they were told to go and do something else. And what they found from this experiment is that the people who had additional time to rehearse the nonsense syllables were more likely to remember it afterwards. The second factor that has to deal with whether or not you're going to remember something is retroactive inhibition. According to this, new information will block information that you have already learned if the information is similar. So in the case of like a kindergarten class, if the students are taught the letter B, They might know the letter B and they might be able to tell you everything about the letter B and draw it out, but as soon as you teach them the letter D, they're going to forget the letter B and they're going to mix them up because the information is similar. A strategy to combat this would be to take and teach the letters on different days so that the letters can be in different places of the student's mind. Another inhibition is proactive inhibition, and it occurs when previous knowledge interferes with learning later information. So if you're taught one way to do it, and then someone comes behind you and says, you've been taught wrong, it's going to be harder for you to go back and learn it the correct way because you have already been taught the wrong way first. So a specific example would be like if students were taught how to multiply fractions, and say they were taught to multiply them sideways instead of cross multiplication, they would have a hard time remembering the correct way to do it once they're taught the correct way to do it. So it's important to note that there's a strong relationship between measures of resistance to interference and school performance. So if you're more likely to be distracted and you have about 101 different things going on at one time while you're at school, and you're not focusing actually on the schoolwork, your school performance will decrease. This is actually shown with students who have ADHD a lot because especially if they are very distractible, they have a hard time processing the information and remembering it. So there are two different types of facilitation, and it's important to know that facilitation actually helps you learn. So proactive facilitation occurs when previous learning can often help a person learn similar information. So if I'm an English speaker and I go to learn Spanish, and I master Spanish and I study it for 7 years and I become fluent in it, when I turn around and I go to learn Italian, it's going to be easier for me to learn Italian because Italian and Spanish are very similar. They're from the same language family, and it might only take me 3 years to learn Italian, whereas it took me 7 years to learn Spanish. So in retroactive facilitation, it's basically improvement in the learning or performance of a task caused by training later in time on a different task. So, for example, because that definition is a little wordy, a girl who learns how to drive a golf cart when she's 10 will find it easier to learn how to drive a car when she's 15 because she already has experience operating a vehicle. So it's basically taking experiences that you've had in the past and taking stuff that you've already learned in the past and generalizing it to a different concept to make it easier for you to learn. So, primacy and recency effect. It is the tendency to learn the first few and last few much better than those in the middle of the list. So I put like a little, we're learning Sound of the Fury in my English class, so of course this is what was on my mind. And say for example, my professor told us the first 2 bullets at the beginning of class, and then his lecture, the meat of his lecture was right here. And then at the end he said, Quentin commits suicide by drowning. Students are more likely to remember this first chunk and this last chunk and forget the middle. We don't exactly know why it happens, but it's important to note that because of this, when you first walk into the classroom, you don't need to be doing like pointless bell ringers or taking attendance or collecting money, because that's instructional time that could be used according to the primacy effect to teach students